Deep in a remote forest, we invited 6 professionals from industry and academia to discuss how artificial intelligence is changing our society. These are the insights from their conversation. Welcome to AI Campfire.
Arguably, you can say most institutions function because once you're trained in a set of policy, procedures, and predictable ways, you're used to being part of like the larger cog in the machine. It's used pejoratively, but I'd say arguably a well-functioning machine relies on the cogs, right? But what does the future of education look like for CEOs and business leaders? Because this is something I thought about, right? I think personally, authenticity might be one of the biggest skills of the future, because we're moving to a world where we're going to have synthetic media and deepfakes, where it's going to be very easy based on historical data to basically predict how CEOs and CFOs will answer questions. Someone that doesn't follow the script, someone that does speak from the heart, is that going to be the thing that makes the future leaders stand out, that have that sort of communication?
Doesn't it come back to the same question though? So with teaching, I think what we're saying is, don't just automate everything, because a lot of teaching is not automatable. I think that's what we all agree. In the same sense, leadership is, the whole distinction that people make between management and leadership, that's not going to go away. If you have a team that needs to rise above what they're able to do and you need to find what is it in them, that's very much leadership. That'll be a person, and it's only a person who can do that well. But then there might be other things, procedural and compliance things that maybe give it to the machine. Why not? And then that just kind of reshapes the job in such a way that it focuses on what matters.
It's funny you mentioned that the leadership versus management sort of hierarchy, right? And you're saying it's always going to be basically the human. But there is a lot of interesting research coming out about AI CEOs and the idea of having AI as line management. The argument is like a lot of this is delegated tasks to make decisions in real time on vast amounts of data that, to be honest, is almost a very difficult job for any human being. Is that going to be realistic? Does anyone buy into that, or do they think this is just smoke and mirrors?
I think we would be shooting ourselves in the leg to think that if we are for economic prosperity, that we won't be replaced if somebody has a chance. If something is more efficient and if machines become more efficient, the bottom line is still the case if it's economic prosperity. So saying, business leaders need people. No, they will need people for as long as there's no alternative.
We've got to remember as well that business leaders are connected to the consumer, supply and demand. And I wonder, as the topic becomes more generally understood, are we going to see a backlash in the same way that we have with ESG to some degree? And it's getting better on that front. But companies that aren't using AI responsibly, I think it all comes down to the delivery.
If I owned like a taxi business and I have a fleet of taxis and I have drivers who are like, there's inflation, we need more benefits. And then Ram comes to me in the middle of the night and says, hey, I've built these automated driverless cars. And if my value system is based on economic prosperity, would I not just go for that? So again, it's a tense topic because we are prescribing to this system. We are more about self than we are about us. And I still think there's a mindset thing. And I know that it's good that ethics and ethical conversations are bringing that to the limelight, but I think we should always think about it from a systems point of view.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. It's already happening. Warehouses have long since become automated. If I order an Amazon package, there may be like 7 human beings in the warehouse, right? So that's happening in manufacturing. It's happening in logistics, supply chain. The efficiency argument is a strong one. It's going to drive a lot of this.
Does this mean that for the future of the workplace, right, are we going to have a situation where it's essentially you're looking at humans that are part of the sort of more elite part of the workforce that aren't automated out of jobs, essentially playing the role of a composer who's managing essentially a variety of algorithms instead of people? And in that case, where does that leave the rest of us?
I had this exact discussion in an earlier such event I was at. And there was a lady there who had worked very early in her career, taking little slips of paper from one side of the BBC office to the other side of the BBC office. And then she pointed out, well, that job is long since gone. And then the job of, women typically who would have done the job of a typist, that job is gone. And Lots of jobs have gone historically. In those instances, the argument is that those people went on to get other jobs in similar organizations. If we play it right as a society, then everybody is doing a slightly different job and they're being made use of. So I think it's not an entirely technological question. It comes back to what does society want to choose on this matter.
For most young people now, I've never seen it before, where a lot of them aren't actually applying for medical degrees. But this idea of, I think there's a lot of anxiety from younger people even applying to universities going, actually, is this going to be all obsolete? Someone actually reached out to me and said, what's the point of doing like a 4-year course when I could do 3-month courses online? That it just seems like everything's moving so quickly. I'd rather stay in the loop, because is the course content even going to be outdated? So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that, even the future of education. Is it that it's going to be much shorter sort of things, so we have to keep people upskilled? But also with the job displacement, if you had to advise someone, what are the future skills of work? How do you prepare for the future? Does anyone really know at this point?
I get requests or questions quite often from the opposite. People in their sort of last quarter of their career coming and saying, look, I've got 10 years or so left, I can retire now, we've got the kids are out of the house. Do I still need to learn about this AI stuff? And I get this question quite a lot, and I always feel like, well, kind of sorry to say, look, it's already here. We talk about lifelong learning, and it's a good thing to do, but I don't think it's longer a good thing to do. I think it's quite an essential thing to do. That's why I still think, learning the fundamentals early on is critical, and we can't just rely on AI-enabled learning. That takes that away, because you're not digitally able if you can type a prompt into ChatGPT. That's not being digitally savvy, right? That's just being a guided monkey, essentially.
I like that, guided monkey. Are we creating a generation of guided monkeys? There's someone else who had a term for it, called the eco-borgs, where he said basically you have the machine, we're just like parrots, we just interpret what the machines say. And I think it's quite telling actually with ChatGPT that, especially the first version when it came out, right? When you put stuff into it, give you some bullet points, but it was so mind-blowing to everyone, I think even globally. I think one things that struck out to me, that it didn't matter whether someone was in like Sao Paulo or whether in London, they all roughly agreed with what ChatGPT was putting as an output, which I think shows the danger of global homogenization. Are we all becoming basically more of the same thing when you've got arguably a handful of companies educating the world at once? And second, are we becoming shallow guided monkeys where we don't actually need the deeper detail, whereas just if I have a few bullet points, that's good enough to get me through the day?
But that's the real danger, right, isn't it? Because the shallow monkeys that are being guided are being guided by an elite, and that will just sort of amplify, the economic disparity between those that benefit from AI and those that don't. And that's, I think, where education must step in to really, stop that. I mean, otherwise we literally have, those that work for those 5 to 10 tech companies that cream off the data, know more about us than ourselves. They recommend to us what we should watch, and then we sit there and scroll through, and it plays exactly into those hands that, not for malicious reasons, but for pure economic reasons.
So, some of them could also be malicious reasons. I mean, we've seen the rise of disinformation, misinformation around the world, and even that's the other one, which I think, forget even AI, just social media and how quickly you can share things. Arguably, it's created grassroots journalism that we've never seen before, to show a real bird's eye view of like what's actually happening in the world through an unfiltered lens that doesn't have to go through certain media outlets, but also it's just showing that the world is moving towards arguably a more dangerous place, where you're having spread of false ideas and even people losing faith even what does truth even exist anymore. Are we moving towards a post-truth world?